everybody, it's Laura Kelly here with DecoArt Americana acrylic paints out on the work table. Today we're going to be talking about how to use all these pretty colors to work with kids and use them to stamp with sponges. So we're going to be talking about how to do it with regular sponges that have been cut into shapes, how to do it with like rolly sponges, and how to do it with foam stamp sponges, but also how to make your own sponges that you can use with kids. So there is this amazing material. I'm gonna get my scissors here, and I've got, this is actually like a spool from some thread. And then this is sponge paper. Isn't that so cool? So right now you see it's like really, really thin. I'm going to draw a shape on the sponge paper, and this is a part that kids love to do. So they could actually do it and then make a pattern and then trace it on here so that you don't waste any sponge paper, or they could do it directly on here, but you're going to use a permanent marker and you're going to draw your shape on the sponge paper. So I'm going to draw a star. There you go. Now I get that not everybody can draw a star like that without a template, which is why you might want to have kids draw it first and make a little pattern. Now that we have this star drawn, I'm going to use my scissors here to cut it out. And then is the really, really fun part, the part that I think is like super magical. So I'm going to cut this star out, and it doesn't have to be exactly on the lines. It can be close, but you just want to, keep it as true to the shape as possible, especially if it's kids, because their artwork is valuable and it matters, and we certainly don't want to alter it. So I'm going to cut this out, and then I've got my star. And the next step is to get my scraps out of the way, and I'm going to use the spool here to make a little handle for my sponge. So to do that, I've got a glue gun here. I'm going to pull off this yucky stuff, and I'm going to put some glue around the bottom of my spool, and then I'm going to stick it right to my star. Bam. And I'm going to let that completely cool off before we do the next step. So now you have this sponge that's not like fluffy enough or like spongy enough to use. So here's where the magic is. This is just some water. I'm going to put this sponge paper in here, and then would you look at that? Isn't that like amazing? It turns into a sponge stamp. So I'm going to squeeze out my water because I don't want to have that in my paint. And I have my own sponge stamp. That's how easy they are to make. And so your kids could make a whole variety. You could do the whole alphabet, or you could do shapes, or you could do like all the different things. All right, let's get started with the paint now. We're going to start with some red. So I'm going to shake it up a little bit, and then I'm going to open it up and pour some on my palette. And I'm also going to get a little bit of orange. And it looks like the orange has already been used before, so I can do the flip cap here. I'll peel off that and put some on my palette. There we go. Because I'm going to do a little blending too. Kids love to blend. So I'm going to start with the roller, just to show you how this works. It's got like a textured pattern in the rolling. I'm going to roll it just like you'd roll for a paint wall, a little bit in my colors here. And then I'm going to roll that on the paper. And you can see like where I didn't get on the other side over here, so it didn't do this part. So I'm going to roll it again. And this is just great because kids will learn like what works and doesn't work. And I'm going to flip it around the other way. So I have the red on the top and the orange on the bottom, and it's going to get me a blend. Isn't that so fun? Let's look at how this other one works. This other one's got like all these different little grooves in it. So I'm going to add some pink and some purple to my palette to show you how this one works. This is a great thing to do with kids for fine motor skills, and also for blending, mixing, just accessing their creativity, exploring art, all those different things that are so super important. All right, so I'm going to get my pink and my purple here, and I want to go all the way around this time. So I'm going to flip it there a little bit. There we go. I'm going to show you how this one looks. How cool is that? That's like a tread mark for like a truck or a car. So that'd be a really fun one to do if you wanted to make like a whole runway to play with, like with little car trucks or little things like that. So that's how you use these rollers. I'm going to move this piece of paper out of the way and show you how to use the stamps with rollers, and I'm going to show you how to use some of the sponges. There's a couple different kinds. We have the one that we made, which is super fun, and then we have them flat. Kids are okay with this because they can hold it this way too. This just makes it a little bit less messy, and then we have these foam stamps, and they all kind of look a little different. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to get some yellow paint. I'm going to flip the top and put some on my palette over here. And then we're going to use that to look at the different ways these three stamps work. So this is the foam stamp. So I'm going to dip it in a little bit. This is a little bit harder because if you see, you're going to get a lot of paint on there, and so kids might make a huge mess, or anybody that makes a huge mess. You can scrape it along the side to not have as much, but you can get a really fun look. The more times you use it, the less paint there is. So you can do different gradients of color, which is really kind of fun. This one's going to absorb a lot of the paint, but it's also going to give you an easier finish than the foam stamp. So this one's going to give you, you can kind of go around all the edges, going to give you, oh look, I got it bubbly. That's so cool, because that's because the sponge is wet. You wouldn't necessarily want to work with a wet sponge, but we just made this one, so it's a little bit wet, but it's going to just give you a little bit of a different effect. There we go. I might actually flip this around and get that little point up there. There we go. It's got a little bit of the red and orange in it too from before, which is really pretty. And then here is the fish. So that's going to show you how that one's going to work without the handle on it. It's going to be messier. I'm going to get it on my hands. You can kind of pat it down all over, which is nice. And it's going to give you the fish. The different sponges do give you a little bit of a bubbly effect as opposed to the foam where you're going to get a flatter effect. So that's a little bit of a difference. So those are some different stamping techniques that you can use. And look at this little house. Look how cute this is. I'm going to try this one with some purple just because I want to try another color on here. I'm going to pour that right on top of my yellow. If you have kids who don't like their colors to mix, you can of course use the palettes where they don't mix. I personally think it's fun, but you can do whatever works for you. So I'm going to kind of scrape this off a little bit because it gets so much paint on it. And then do some houses. So look how fun that is. All right, let's get a new piece of paper and let's do an entire little painting with the stamps and the rollers so you can see how you can make a project out of these different stamps. All right, so we have a new piece of paper here. We have a new clean roller, and I've created a palette with a paper plate with two different blues and a white. I really love this true blue color. It's one of my favorites. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my roller covered with these three paints. I didn't mix them together. I'm gonna let them kind of naturally blend, and I'm gonna use that to create the top of like an ocean or a, maybe an aquarium or a lake, kind of a water scene. So I've got paint on my roller, and I'm gonna go just one direction. No, actually go two directions. It's kind of what the sponge did to create my underwater scene. Isn't that so fun? It kind of looks like it's almost marbleizing. I keep getting a little more paint. And when it doesn't roll, it kind of like paints like a brush. So you wanna kind of not push so hard so you can get that rolly look. And there's my underwater scene of blue. We're gonna take just a couple minutes to let that dry, and then we're gonna add some fish. It looks like our underwater paint has dried. So I'm gonna flip my palette around here because I've got some orange paint here and I have a different little fish. Look, it's like a little angel fish. It looks like Dory. But I'm gonna go ahead and dip it in my orange paint, and then I'm going to, so I've got it completely covered. I'm going to just gently press it onto my ocean. And look, I've got a little fish. I could do a whole school of fish. So stinking adorable. Look at that. And so fun. And this is where you can get into all different educational aspects to using these techniques, because you could totally do like 10 of these and have one with 1 fish, one with 2 fish, one with 3 fish, and work on your counting skills. You could do one with orange fish like this one, or red or green or yellow, and work on your colors. You could use different shape sponges and do this and work on your shapes. So lots and lots of ways to use your artwork to teach educational concepts as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about that right now. But first, I'm going to move this beautiful masterpiece out of the way. All right, now on the work table, we've got some little pieces of paper, 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch. And I've got a foam stamp of a little car, and on the palette, I've added some pink and some purple paint. So I'm going to show you a really fun thing that you can do for kids to help them with sorting and sequencing. You can use your sponges to create your pink cars. And then you can use your same, I'm gonna get all the pink off of there, your same little stamp here to do purple cars. And then when these are dry, you can use them to sort the purple ones from the pink ones, or to do patterns. So a great first pattern for kids is totally like pink, purple, pink, and then which one comes next, which would be, of course, your purple. You can also use them for sorting. So you could sort by all the pinks and all the purples. Or if you use different stamps, you could sort like all the cars from all the trees, or all the flowers from all the fish. So the kids can make the little cards, and then you can use them as an educator or a parent to help them with different skills. So that's one way you can use the stamps. Another way that's really fun, especially for those kids just learning to count and learning their numbers, is you can give them something like this. So this is just a piece of cardstock. It's got the number 3 on it and the word 3, because it's good for them to see those things together, the numbers and the words. And you can have them use a stamp. So I'm going to use this little tree. I'm going to grab some green. This is a really pretty festive green. And I'm going to put some on the palette here. And then I'm going to dip my tree in it. And you could do the trees too, like in different colors. You could use different shades of green for sorting, for talking about light versus dark, so many different ideas. But I'm going to do 3 trees here. So how fun, they look like broccoli, don't they? How fun is that? That's a great way to work with counting. So with stamps and acrylic paint, there are so many things you can do. You can do the little cards for doing sorting and sequencing and patterns. You can do numbers, and you could like even do something really fun like this. Like, what if you took a piece of paper and a pen and you did like lowercase a. So let's say you're learning about the alphabet and you give your kiddo the lowercase a. They can take their tree stamp and that green paint, and they could stamp their whole letter A while you talk about the sound it makes. A, and ah. It might have been good to do like an apple stamp for that one, right? And maybe do the tree for T, but you get the idea. So that's just another fun way you can use the stamps in learning. So we've got all those. We've got our masterpiece that we painted here too, which I think is really, really beautiful and fun. And hopefully this is inspirational to you. There's so many ways to use stamps with kids to create art and to learn all kinds of great skills. So until next time, keep creating.